take a step back from your standard default perspective when you look at being human, what we deal with, the quote-unquote plights that humans, male or female, because of how we're made, those that engineered us, the gods, as I refer to them, but they're not actually gods, they're just advanced beings with the ability to genetically engineer things. Long story that I'm not going to get into. Those that engineered us, well, firstly, they made us chimeras, half animal, half human. When you start looking at animal, look at the roots of that. Well, shit, that actually has its roots in spirit and soul and what animates all of us. Anyway, so we're made as what would appear to be these chimera-like beings, half animal, half human. Now, our brains have this reptile brain, the mammalian brain, and then we have this thing that they kind of bolted onto the front of our brain called the prefrontal cortex, which is where supposedly our intelligence and consciousness or, awareness and that kind of shit seems to reside. Okay, so we've got this. There's parts of us that are, how do I say this, we're half human, half animal. We've got these multifaceted brains in the sense that it's got like this triplicity, if you will, of parts, reptilian, mammalian, and then the prefrontal cortex. It's like, okay. Now, on top of that, getting more specifically to the point, we are wired with a set of glands. Wired with, that may not be the right phrasing, but you get my point. Built into us. And wired throughout our nervous systems, I guess, are these glands that produce chemicals. Now, before we go too deep, let's look at the context of the word that I'm referring to, or the meaning of the word that I'm referring to. Chemicals. You could stick a fucking needle into these glands and extract the chemicals that are contained within them. The pineal gland, for instance, there is dimethyltryptamine. Within the body, there's these various glands. Okay, I'm not going off on some crazy tangent here, but follow me along, because this is just high-level shit. These glands produce chemicals. Chemicals here, we consider them to be drugs. So in a funny sort of way, we literally have a pharmacological factory built directly into us. Now, we can find all kinds of ways in which that is beneficial when you look at, for instance, the animal or reptile aspect of us, the fight or flight, those types of things, those lower base level life or death primordial types of things that would be wired deeply into the root of us. But on top of all of that, there's this complex system of glands that dose us with drugs, dose us with chemicals. Now, we're mental, we're emotional, and we're psychological. Chemicals affect all of that to a very, very substantial degree. Now, when we are ignorant, when we are naive, when we are easy to manipulate by somebody that has more knowledge than you about any particular thing on top of knowledge of how to manipulate human beings, how to influence them, control them, manipulate them. Think about what I'm saying. We were engineered in such a way that we have these pharmacological factories contained within us, that when someone outside of you understands how to manipulate that structure within you, they can begin to control you because they know how the chemical factory works. And they know the drugs that are being emitted and what effect that ultimately has on the human body, the human mind, the human chemistry, the thought processes, the psychology. There's an aspect of us, because we're these human meat sacks, we're biological beings, and chemicals are all part of it. Chemistry and the body and the blood and the gases in the blood and the iron in the blood and the air, all this stuff, and I don't know much about that shit at all. Now, if I were to take a needle full of heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, or any other quote-unquote pharmacological or illicit substance and shoot it into your fucking arm, you'd have a pretty hard time maintaining yourself, wouldn't you? Being quote-unquote normal, maybe rational, and logic and reason would get really skewed. And if anybody's out there in their younger days or are still in their younger days and you've played with these substances, you probably have a sense of what I'm talking about. If I inject you with any foreign substance that's known to alter your state of being, your psyche, well, good luck maintaining yourself, especially if there are outside forces, people, whatever. That's kind of more or less what I'm referring to in this scenario is people, but these things can't, people, start affecting you while you're dosed with chemicals. Now, in this weird thing of being a human, you don't have to be being dosed with chemicals, and somebody from outside of you can come and affect you. And you're like, well, you're in control, they can't affect you. Well, if I do something really shitty or horrible, if I steal from you, hurt you, harm you, hurt your family, there are ways in which people can come and impose shit upon you. What, or good or bad. But look at the world we live in. So, to a large degree, a lot of the shit we see coming out of a lot of human beings isn't all that fucking positive and, full of love and light, so to speak. So we have these chemical factories in us. Now, think about it. This society, the systems at work are all designed and built with the purpose of manipulating various aspects of us. The Hollywood, the music, the television, the propaganda from the government, from Hollywood, from all of these control mechanisms. They're working to influence the mind, influence what you think and what you perceive, thereby kind of having an effect on the chemicals that you're being dosed with. As I've gotten older, as I've gotten deeper and deeper and deeper into trying to understand the walk of the human, the plight of the human, I look at the variables that make us up. I look at the spiritual realm, what's going on there, how that affects us. I look at how we're engineered, the various equations that are built into us. And it's like we're fucking built in such a way to be completely puppetable. That's a word, isn't it? Puppetable? I'm kidding. Manipulated, played like a puppet, played like a marionette. And when we are ignorant, when we don't have the knowledge, when we don't have self-mastery of mind, of emotion, and this is not what this world teaches us, only few will ever find that, then we're all fodder for forces outside of us, be them 3D physical people with power and a malignant mind and a desire to do all kinds of fucked up shit, or the spiritual realm, just like it says in the biblical stuff, for those of you that buy into that shit, the principles and principalities that are working against us. Oh, that shit is very real. Plus planetary energies. How that shit affects us is very, very real. When we're ignorant, when we're naive, we wake up and experience life, and we kind of guide and direct certain aspects of it. If get up, go to work, pay your bills, pay your taxes, and all that shit. But I tell you people, we are so much less in control of the things that take place and manifest in our fucking lives than anybody fucking thinks, or most people believe. It's almost sickening, and it's almost scary, because the more I've learned, the more I see, the more I know, the more I've grown in my understanding of this. What's out there doing this is not benevolent. It's not benevolent at all. Thusly, we see the culmination of all of the manipulation of all of us everywhere we go in the world. You see what I'm saying? When you see the world for what it is, it's like, whoa, it's all there. It's just fucking people are in a trance. People are asleep. People are ignorant. People are naive. People aren't necessarily, quote unquote, bad. They've been switched off, intentionally made dumb and ignorant, intentionally kept naive and ignorant. And as humans, partially animals, when we're ignorant, when we're naive, we're more like, I hate to say it, but it's kind of the truth. I'm part of this equation, so I'm not singling myself out of this when I say this. We're more like dumb animals when we're fucking ignorant and naive. And then when somebody outside of us, a fucked up girlfriend, a fucked up parent, somebody fucked up in life comes and fucks with us, they inject these problems with these experiences. We get these pharmacological factories pumping off chemicals in our bodies. It's like, whoa. And then society, the world, whatever, tells us and teaches us or convinces us, conditions us, well, you've got to manage yourself. You've got to, because society won't have that if you get angry or whatever it might be. And I understand that there's a measure of having to manage yourself. But think about this. Okay, I hear it, I get it, that makes sense because of society and we're civilized, right? But on the same token, when you think about the chemicals of anger, rage, even love, and the opposite side of the spectrum, like love and peace and happiness, those chemicals are fucking powerful. If I walk up to you and kick you right in the shin, punch you in the nose, or something, and do something to just fucking piss you off for someone, go ahead and control yourself from wanting to punch me back in the mouth to teach me a lesson for being that outrageously audacious to think that it was okay to come and impose myself on you. You see what I mean? There's a massive rush of chemicals that you will get if I come and do something to you that you deem inappropriate and crossing lines, getting into your personal space, offensive, etc. Now try managing yourself with all that. A lot of people don't. A lot of people fucking respond accordingly because the chemical induces, or in many cases causes the action, which is in direct response to the stimuli that came in to our experience. Somebody comes and talks to you like a bitch. You want to punch them in the fucking mouth to tell them that you're worthy of their respect, or they're going to get punched in the mouth, or some version of that, or any other scenario, if you get my point. But now let me give you a big dose in a similar context, but not the anger chemicals, the love chemicals, the fear chemicals, or any of that stuff. let me give you a big dose of heroin in your arm, which just puts it right into the bloodstream. And heroin or meth or coke or DMT, they did that in the Spirit Molecule, that movie. They were giving them injections of DMT. Go ahead and manage yourself while you're being dosed with chemicals. You see what I mean? So one of the underlying points I'm getting at with this being human thing, the human experience, is how foundationally, how fundamentally, completely and totally and utterly manipulatable we are. And we're built for this shit. We're built for this shit. Totally built for it. And what creates the strings, so to speak, in my assessment, that allows us to be puppeted like marionettes without our own will, is ignorance and naivety. And the more knowledge we have, I'm not saying stupid knowledge, I'm talking about right knowledge, knowledge of the laws of the universe, knowledge of ourselves, knowledge of just the thing, right knowledge. Mastery of self, blah, blah, blah. Fuck, if we all spent the first 30 years of our lives learning about these things and attuning to these things before we go out and get married, before we go out and start having kids, before we go out and start doing major things, the world would be a big fucking different place. But since we don't spend the time to do that, because we have all these glands built into us, because we don't have any ability, many of us, lots of us, because you can be a controlled rageaholic and somebody piss you off and you may not rage on them, but behind the scenes it's almost like a narcissistic thing where you'll fucking destroy them. This shit manifests in so many different ways out of people because of their personality types. The point is, this is what the gods engineered us for. And the spiritual people tell you, it's so your soul can learn lessons. I'm telling you, people, I believe about 90% at this point, maybe even more like 93%, that's actually bullshit. Because the soul is, in the context that we're told, it's a spiritual thing. It's outside of us, actually. It doesn't actually reside in the body. The consciousness, the spirit, the essence resides in the body. The soul does not. We don't actually have. To say I have a soul means I'm in possession of it. We are not actually in possession of it. You see, people don't realize. So I'm telling you, people, when you wake up to the nature of this reality and what we are, how we're made, and how there's these multiple levels to us, these multi-aspects of us that are outside of us that seem to have an influence on or control us, like they say, your higher self. I think some of this is such profound bullshit, because I just think it's such profound bullshit, because I think that some negative evil force knows that human beings will inevitably and invariably go on their own walk to find truth, peace, happiness, quote-unquote God, whatever it is, outside of the herd. So there's these spiritual people. And this evil has to have all of its bases covered. So in the realm of the spiritual, it finds these people who seem to have a nice smile and soft eyes and a loving voice and sound peaceful and spiritual, produce a lot of these half-truths, partial truths, or things that on the surface, on the veil that it presents you, seems to be spiritual truth. But when you pull the veil off, you're like, wait a minute, that's a big fat steamer right there. There's nothing really of substance to that. Most people don't. They just don't. Most people accept. I've digressed a little bit. I just wanted to present for people to think about the fact that what created you, this quote-unquote benevolent God, these engineers, these Anunnaki, whatever the fuck they are, it's entirely possible, if you've learned anything about the Anunnaki, if you know anything about those stories, have read any of those Sumerian texts, Marduk was the son of Enki. Enki, our creator, the master engineer, the master geneticist. Marduk, being his son, may very well have had, due to this whole Anunnaki thing, learned a lot of that knowledge and very well might have modified us subsequent to the gods even leaving. There's so many possibilities, but the point being is, I think it's somewhat self-evident to anybody that's really paid attention, looked at, analyzed, and began to piece this whole thing together of like what we are. I have a little phrase I use, what we are and why we are. When you start looking at the equations that are in us and how easily they're manipulated, stimulated, how easily manipulatable and stimulatable we are. The pharmacological factory that's built and engineered into us that causes us to be dosed with chemicals that are real. And somehow what? It's the walk of the human to control the emotions. So what? So if I was to practice getting injected with cocaine and finding a way to manage and maintain control of myself in complete it seemed normal, or managed, I guess I would have achieved something, right? So I got to do the same thing with the chemicals that are built into me. I know that seems kind of fucking weird, but I'm telling you, people, the more I actually sit down with almost 48 years of life, contemplate, think, analyze, assess, I'm reasonably intelligent, goddamn sure don't know all things, etc., etc., etc. the more things that I find about this construct, about what runs it, and I'm not talking about the Illuminati, I'm talking about spiritual forces outside of us, the way we are built, that there's just so much shit that I don't find to be benevolent in any way, form, or fashion. While there is the ability for us to learn, while we're here doing this process of fucking generally suffering, or, there's obviously things that can be learned about self, about life, about the human experience, but it's not the only goddamn way to learn. We can learn a lot of the same lessons through a lot of other means and mechanisms and experiential things, but nope. The energies that we put out through those other mechanisms don't produce a resonant vibration, a vibratory frequency, a vibratory resonance that feeds these fuckers, whatever they are, the gods, the fucking archons, the fucking demiurge, whatever the fuck it is, it's feeding off this fucking energy that humans put out because, oh yeah, by the way, the glands create the chemicals that cause us to feel the emotions, and let's say it's on the negative side, or the positive, but on the negative side, there's an energy, or the positive, there's energy that comes out of you. Energy that comes out of your heart, energy that comes out of your head, stimulate large groups of people, war, famine, some major catastrophe. You're creating a smorgasbord. It's feast time for the boys, because everybody's come home and we're going to have a big feast. Let's go stimulate a whole bunch of fucking humans into fear or war or something. And they pervert us by way of the Jew and all the things that they've been doing into perverse sexual acts, perverse sexual desires, things of that nature that would not be normal to us. I tell you, people, when you start really, really looking at things in a way that, well, we're not taught to, we're not conditioned to, you start finding things that you wouldn't expect to find. They're there because they're there. They're not part of what the system tells us about. They're not part of what the spiritual people tell us about. They're not part of anything that I've ever experienced in this life other than my own goddamn journey of self-discovery, of self, of the world, of the spiritual realms, of what the fuck this supposed God is, and all the layers in between. It's just like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Meanwhile, us little meat sacks are down here. Most of us are oblivious, most of us are ignorant, most of us are naive, getting recycled back and forth in this fucking soul-grinding, fucking human meat-grinding experience of just death, destruction, war, famine, lack, death, destruction, war, famine, lack, reset. Bring them back to 0 point. Death, destruction, war, famine, lack. Death, destruction, war, famine, lack. Reset. Bring them back to 0 point. Death, destruction, war, lack, famine, death, destruction, reset. You see what I'm saying? This is what these motherfuckers, that you people that are Christian, that call God, this is what they've been doing to us. And let's say it hasn't been God. Okay, it's Lucifer. Well, this supposed benevolent loving God that you fucking Christians and Muslims and whatever get on your fucking knees to, is what loosed this Lucifer, devil, Satan thing upon the whole of its creation to turn this place into this fucking massive meat grinder of death, destruction, war, lack, famine, blah, 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 reset after, every 10 generations. There's these massive fucking resets. It's clear that there's these resets. You can see it planetarily, it happens. There's also these resets, they do a lot. They destroy civilizations, they destroy cultures, they reset us back to a very, very 0 point level of knowledge, of technology, of industry, of all kinds of other stuff. They totally fucking reset us. We're little puppets down here in their little fucking game, their little fucking play. I'm telling you, people, some of you might have followed me all the way through this video, and you hear me saying it, and you're like, yeah, man, okay, really, it seems like that could be possible. I'm telling you, people, until this shit really settles in, until you discover this shit for yourself, will it ever really settle in? This kind of shit doesn't really settle in until you've discovered it for yourself. Of your own efforts, of your own conclusions, your own thought processes of putting everything together that's brought you to the point where you are, and you're like, holy fuck, you've got to be kidding me, it can't fucking actually be like this. But it is. It is. It has been. The evidence is all around us. That's why slavery's been with us from the beginning. That's why we've known war from the beginning. That's why we continue to repeat the cycles that we continue to repeat. We're intelligent beings. We learn lessons, but somehow we seem to be learning or forgetting the lessons of, just a couple hundred years ago. How long has money been with us, doing to us what it's done, and we haven't learned any lessons through that process? Yeah, I'm telling you, people, what this place is not the benevolent thing that we think it is. Most people, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, and I know opinions are like assholes, everybody's got one, and some stink worse than others. But my opinion is this place was built to be this way. And those people that experience happiness, quote-unquote, love, joy, whatever, in a lot of respects, not all, but in a lot of respects, don't know the reality, have tuned out a lot of the fucking reality of this world, don't engage that shit, deny it. I know it sounds really critical. I know it sounds very opinionated. I just understand that for you to be in that state of bliss and love and it's all joy and blah, 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 you really got to be disconnected from the reality of what the fuck this world actually is. Because it's like, how do you find that kind of love, joy, peace, and happiness if you knew you were standing neck deep in a cesspool of shit? You would have to do nothing but mindfuck yourself in some way. Like, let's say you were a prisoner of war, like, what's that, Rambo movies? They had Rambo 2 or something, they had him in a cesspool. He was forced, couldn't do anything about it. At that point, maybe you have to mindfuck yourself into some place of bliss and happiness to get through the experience. But I think that's what most people do. Because if you really tune into the reality of this fucking world, if you tune into the reality of what this fucking spiritual game is that's going on, fucking manipulating the shit out of us, if you tuned into the reality of what this world actually is, you saw through the veil, you saw through the facade, you understood what the Illuminati is, how long they've been working, how they've been killing kids, doing blood sacrifice, just all of the evil that actually exists on this world. In this world, most people would never leave their fucking houses. It's that bad. It is actually that bad, and most people just don't realize it. And for someone, maybe for instance like myself, to say that, people will be like, oh dude, you're just being negative. Oh dude, you're just making a mountain out of a molehill. Oh dude, you're just this, that, or the other. And their mind and the ego mechanism fires off to protect what it is we think we know, to protect our perception, as we've interpreted it. Because hey, we're in the know, right? So he couldn't be right. No, it couldn't be that way. He's just angry. He's just hurt. He's just jaded. He's just whatever label the mind can quickly affix to him. Because the nature of what he's telling me is so in defiance of anything I think I know and what I've been told. Well, he's got to be that because everybody else believes this. Okay, be that as it be, it is what it is. The sad reality of me waking up every day is that at some point throughout the course of that day, I wish for death. I wish to get out of this place. I wish to leave. I find, even though we have the ability to have life, yeah, there's lots of... I find this place to be so repugnant, so repulsive, so just disgusting, all the way down to nature, and how nature kills and eats everything else, and just this whole thing, when you see through the illusory nature of it. It's almost like when Morpheus took Neo to the real world, and it was this desolate place that had been destroyed and was lying in ruin with clouds over it. That's kind of where I see things now. No, and like I said before, God's not coming to save us. Jesus isn't coming to save us. None of us are fucking Neo, and Morpheus isn't coming to pull us the fuck out. There's just none of that. We just get to exist in a world that is much like what was depicted when Morpheus brought Neo down to the real world after he had been brought into the Matrix. You know the part? The thing is down here, people just don't see that reality. They see the illusion. They see the illusion. They see pretty flowers and mountains in the sky, and they're like, oh, it's so beautiful. And there's math and Fibonacci, phi, pi, and all this mathematics and precision and the reality that we experience, and there's all these cycles and all that other stuff of birth and death and rebirth and death and growth and all. Okay, sure. But you know what? If I'm going to take and create a race of beings, I'm going to have to create an environment for them to live in. I'm going to have to put this race of beings that I've created in an environment that will sustain them. It's like, people are like, well, let's be grateful that God gave us this bountiful earth and blah, 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 blah. It's like, wait a second. That motherfucker created us. If it wanted us to live, it would have had to have created an environment for us to be sustained. It just makes sense that you have to create the foundation for the life to be able to live. So a plane of existence that, supports life but let's be so grateful and thank you to the quote-unquote Lord for giving us... Really? I know. What I'm saying, I know what it sounds like on its face. I know how it sounds for someone to be talking like this. And I know what I'm about to say might sound a little arrogant, and I don't mean it to be. But if you only knew what I know, would you then begin to understand why I feel the way I do and say the things that I say? If you only have seen or experienced the things that I've seen or experienced in my walk of life through my experiences, you would better understand why I say what I say. I'm not and the interesting thing with people is, and I know a lot of this in the last couple of minutes has been a severe digression off of the point, but a lot of the major point of the pharmacological factory and we're manipulated, but a lot of people think that if you talk, quote unquote, bad about God or Jesus or something, instantaneously, oh, he's a devil worshiper, he must be of the devil, and that kind of ridiculous fucking
brain-dead meat sack that's been indoctrinated and programmed to fire off certain responses when certain stimuli hit the mind, but there's no intelligent thinking there going on, because I'm just as against all of that evil shit. But see, for me, it's like I see what's put us here and what's been doing to us, what it's been doing to us as that actual evil force. It takes taking in a lot, experiencing a lot, seeing a lot, understanding a lot to be able to fucking come to those conclusions. And you could say, you know, people's egos will fire off all kinds of things in their minds, convincing them that I'm wrong or that I'm blah, 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 whatever the fuck, and that they're right. Okay, fine. I'm not here to convince anybody. What I'm here to do, essentially, is share some of my discoveries, what I think, what I see, and tickle your critical thinker. Really, get you to think. If I can, outside the box, help you to consider getting out of the box, that's my point. Whether you agree with everything I say or not, whether you think some of what I'm saying might be like, wow, dude's spot on, and other parts of it, dude's way out there. Okay, you know, take from what it is that I present what you will. If you find it for nothing more than entertainment value, then great. Hey, at least I was able to give you a good fucking laugh.